Has to be. I've listened to it over and over, and it really fascinates me. You're very lucky. Here's the second part of Kenneth Hopkins' interview.
They use a clone that seemed to be part. I don't know what arrangement was made when the Pleadians, Greys, and the military came together to put an embryo into my mother. I really don't know the whys, but the Pleadians have repeatedly said to me, you are, because I was asking, when I started to understand that I was a contactee, it made no damn sense. And for most of my life, I had no idea of it. And so why the hell are you interested in me was my big question. All my past lives have been on Earth, American Indians, Europe, China. So I was surprised. They said you were born unto us. They were referring to the embryo. And I'm half Scandinavian, which is Pleadian. So eventually, my son, when I was supposed to be half German because my mother's German, but Scandinavian. It was funny because when I was born, I was so white, they had concerns.
They worried you didn't have any pigment.
Yeah. So I came to understand that 2 years ago. I actually found out they had told me I was born onto them. And then the hybrids, which are all over the planet, put in just like me, we mate with. So they bring us together. And then they were saying, you are half us and we are half you to me. Now, the Pleadian hybrids are a lot more an aggressive group than the regular Pleadians because they've experienced the violence of Earth.
Okay.
Trauma. The Pleadians from the planet don't know fear. They don't know the negative direction of emotion. They have no concept. They're accepting. As someone is describing them, they're like little angels.
Okay.
So there's a vast difference between the hybrids on Earth, and so now they're flying back and forth from their planet to Earth, and they have ships in between. And my earlier abductions were to those ships in between. The Pleadians have probably spent the most time with me of all the groups. Greys, I don't have much awareness of. And then the other thing we get into in these abductions is what we call the alternate personalities. When you have missing time, other personalities that develop. When you have a missing time experience, you're looking at dissociative identity disorder. Another personality is active when you have a blackout or missing time experience. So with most of the Greys, the missing time, because there's another personality interacting with the Greys. The Pleadians suppress a lot of memory of our interactions with them. And we also have, now when I was involved in the MK Ultra, which is what I have to go back to stop the dissociation from occurring, because that set the cycle that became somewhat my interactions with the Pleadians. The mind can't, if the mind, what brings on dissociation is a couple things: severe trauma, or if the mind can't make sense of things.
Kenneth, you've mentioned hybrids, and I've heard you talk about hybrids before. I'm not exactly sure who or what hybrids are. I mean, obviously there are some biological.
They're like me. I'm a hybrid.
You're a hybrid, and you are a hybrid. You're Scandinavian, which is a special version of Pleadians, Is
Yeah, the
that correct?
Pleadians, the Greys, and the military played a role. There's a more complicated story, but my mother, my mother's great uncle, or her uncle, wanted her to have his child. And so my mother was going to get pregnant by my uncle. And if you check the breeding charts, that's okay. A daughter can have a child from an uncle. So my mother and my uncle were setting that up. And then it got interceded. And so my uncle thought I was related to him. I was his son. My great uncle thought I was his son.
Yeah, I have a friend who had somewhat. She believes she had somewhat of a similar situation where she thought she was the child of her father, and it turned out that her father had died before her mother was impregnated, and
Huh.
there's nothing celestial about this. It was just that her father had died, and uncle came over to console the widow, and they ended up having a child, and yes, she like perfectly normal, no problem. And an uncle, or I mean, family members can impregnate other family members, so
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, quite possible. I mean,
So the hybrids are like me.
okay.
They came out of the Truman era. They started combining human genetics and celestial genetics in the Truman era.
Kenneth, can I ask, whose idea was it?
I haven't been able to get any information out of the Truman era. I got another contact that told me about the genetic stuff, but she was very vague on it. I was born in 1953. So they did it around January of 1953, which is before the Eisenhower negotiations in 54 or 55. So deals had been made with the Celestials in the Truman era.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many, unfortunately, the military aligned itself with some of the worst of the Celestials, the Reptilians,
Right.
the Draconians,
Yeah.
the Anunnaki. So, and a lot of the researchers at the time said they ended up associating with the worst of the Celestials. Now, there's settlements on Mars. The Anunnaki, Reptilian, and US military took possession of properties on Mars. NASA is a propaganda organization. In my interviews with people, I was hearing about the scientific stuff that NASA was doing. Cloaking in 1960, 61. As the woman said, the man could walk into a room and you wouldn't see him. So NASA was involved with the Celestials in the 50s. NASA had involvement with the Celestials. Abductees have described NASA emblems on those people visiting them at night with the Celestials.
Okay.
So
Wow.
Go ahead.
has there been no actual inbreeding since the Truman era? I mean, weren't they messing around with our genome earlier? I mean,
Not with the Pleadians. There's
No?
some question with the Anunnaki. And the Reptilians have had shown interest to make man more serving in genetic manipulation. There were women gave birth
How
to
do the Anunnaki and the reptilians, how are they related?
They're involved is probably the best way to say it. Okay. They're of the lower frequencies, so they come together just like the ones of the higher frequencies come together. But and there's battles that are going on. The Reptilians did an evacuation of Earth, a major evacuation of Earth about 10 years ago. The Pleadians drove them off. There's battles going on in space over Earth. and the Anunnaki, the military, and the reptilians are in collaboration on that.
It's a lot to put your mind around. Why did they crack your ribs?
I'm going to find out with hypnosis. If you read the letter I sent you,
I did not. Okay, I don't know if I got one. All right.
you don't worry. It explains. I posted my ribs, broken ribs from the abduction, and then a person from Canada came back with the reply that I sent you. They explained that I was trying to escape, which I find hard to believe. I've been with the military since birth. And they said 3 American soldiers tried to restrain me because I was escaping. And then they fractured the ribs on a table. So I didn't have consciousness.
You don't buy that.
What?
You don't buy that.
I don't buy that I was escaping. So we're going to be doing a hypnosis session Sunday. And where so much injury and pain was involved, it should be an easy regression to go to. We're going to find out what happened. But why would I suddenly be trying to escape? I mean, so I was teleported to Canada is what I assumed. Wow. There's an American-Canadian group. And so that was where the confusion and where they caused the ribs to break. They had just previously replaced the left lung. So when I wake up from these surgeries, they end up taking me to a hospital. They put me on morphine to decline. For 3 days, the pain levels were horrendous from the lung replacement. I can send you pictures of their surgery, their surgical marks. So I thought the ribs broke from the lung replacement. The other thing that happened with the lung replacement is it didn't have the antibodies for COVID. So the left lung became infected, viral pneumonia in the left lung. The right lung, no problem. It had the antibodies. Now the clone programs have been going on for a while. So they basically create 2 of us.
Okay.
And our consciousnesses can go between the clone and our bodies. I tried to write that up in a report, but it got deleted, of course. So I had a heart attack at 45 at night, in the middle of the night. They have sensors when blood becomes irregular, the implants. They got signal of their heart attack. They took me that night and they replaced a section of the heart. And so they took that from the clone.
And was this the Pleadians that did that for you?
No, military replaced the second lung.
Okay.
The military had concerns with me going overseas. So a week before going overseas, those ribs were broken. Okay. So
yeah, Kenneth, you've mentioned military and military involvement several times since an early age. Have you ever served in the military? Just out of curiosity.
I ran in the military to hide because people were looking for me, and my understanding is they're looking to kill me. So I had no money. I was homeless. So I ran into the Navy for 18 months. The book explains it. Both books. The second one I'm working on now. The other one we're working on setting up the book for publication. UFO Girl, the second rewrite, I call it, deals with military intelligence. There are homicides occurring around these abductions in Wenham and Beverly. And because they picked a young woman to watch me out of the MK Ultra projects. She had a cerebral implant. She had violent convulsions. So she was the one they assigned to watch me. She spoke to her friends about what she was doing they were killed in a rigged automobile accident. So this comes up in the book, the homicides around things. And so it's hard. There's a lot of intricacy going on. So it's kind of hard to explain it. The book does it pretty well. My second rewrite, because so the girl has an implant, and I have a photograph of a child in the projects in which the MK Ultra put implants to the brainstem. So the Greys take incredible interest in her because of the implant in her head. The 16-hour missing time experience is dealing with them taking her apart and showing me the implant.
Are there like, I mean, an implant, like a cranial implant? I mean,
It's put down through the center of the head and it connects to the brainstem. It's a transmitter of some sorts. I believe it uses the body's electrical system. I couldn't get much information on these implants. So the Greys are becoming very interested in the agent. They know she's an agent. I didn't. I thought she was a girlfriend. The agents they introduced to you, they act like girlfriends. And so I always took people for what they said. And I almost walked into a homicide of myself and torturing and the military intervened on that one. They sabotaged my car so I wouldn't make the meeting. And then the people at the meeting disappeared. Their bodies were never. So I went undercover to recover the bodies for the FDEA. And they accused me of killing their friend. So I don't really understand what's happening. But there's an entity connected with me and the abductions with the Greys. His name, we used the name Kenneth for him. Kenneth brought about the agent during an abduction with a young college girl in Wenham. During the top secret security clearance, the Department of Defense decided, I was working with a Department of Defense contractor. I was impressed with the building, so I brought many girlfriends to see the building. They became suspicious. They decided to follow me home. So, or follow me out with the girlfriend. Our memory and what they witnessed conflicted. So they realized there was another personality involved. They watched the abduction occur. A beam came down into the woods. Kenneth and the young woman walked into the beam, and that's what the Department of Defense intelligence people saw. So as they're being beamed up, Kenneth locks them in their car. Kenneth can telepathically, Kenneth has some abilities, but he locks them in their car because he doesn't want them interfering with the abduction. That becomes the reason they bring a young agent in. So we thought I and the young girl had a screen memory. We thought we went to a movie. We thought we went to the movie Blazing Saddles. But then when the military started questioning us about the movie, we knew nothing about the movie. So then I'm assuming they made the assumption that there was another personality involved. So the Greys are great at putting screen memories in people. So along with the missing time, you might even get a memory of something you did, but usually the memories are slightly off. But most people are not questioning their past memories. So all the girls that were abducted, which was about a dozen, described in 76, 77, 78, never knew they were abducted. The 16-hour missing time with the agent, she knew about it. I didn't know she was an agent. I didn't figure out she was an agent until around 2000. So the book is about her and her role. That's why it's called UFO.
Okay.
And
Kenneth. Just to get back on the implants and like the physical changes made to your bodies and other people. I mean, there should be, if there is a brain implant in somebody, are there X-rays? Is there any,
The medical science has done quite a job with the MRIs that show the implants. They call them artifacts.
Mm-hmm.
And they say it's a mistake of the MRI.
Okay.
But the MRI cannot put an object in a place that there
I think
isn't.
we'd all be in trouble then.
So, but then they had to do some switching away from metal as implants. Because when the MRI came around, there was problems with the metal implants. I have 9 in me now. I had 7. A professional evaluated me, and she showed me the location of all the implants, and which made the military.
Do they go all through your body?
The one here, if the blood is disrupted, there's a septic infection, will create enough pain to put me in a hospital. So it landed me in a hospital on several infections. As the infections cleared up, the pain diminished. So a lot of the implants do medical diagnostic. They're used by the ETs as well as the military. It seems like what they're replacing the organs for me to live to a period of time. I believe I got some interesting information. I believe this Earth's evacuation is going to be about 27 years.
Jeeps. Should we be happy about that, or
it's going to be a rebirth, just like the people brought to Earth were. They set up their societies. They knew their origins, the societies that point to the Pleadian planets. So technology, the military or the Pleadians, I guess both have put me in time, past time and future time. In the future time, all the technologies aren't functioning. Cars are used to block rivers, redirect water systems. So when they put me in the future to mate with this woman from the future. And then they put me to 1960, but I refused to work with, they wanted me to get a 16-year-old pregnant. I wasn't comfortable with that. They have their own value systems, which are somewhat different than ours. So I was very pleasant to the girl, and I was supposed to drive a car to take her out. But in the time travel, there's a loss of physical coordination. There's also the stuff that forms in your mouth and throat. It's like snake skin that comes off of a snake, and you have to pull it out and cough it out. So that makes
that's only to do with time travel?
For me, it occurred in the time travel, except for the future time travel. It occurred in the past time travel. So I'm coughing this stuff up, pulling it out with my hands, and so a very unpleasant experience. In the future, there wasn't any of that. I've come across one other person that described the same thing. A woman described the same thing. So I didn't know that was related to time travel. And I'm not giving any information prior to being picked up. It would be nice if they briefed me. On the missions, they briefed us.
Okay.
When we're teleported, we can't be shot. We have abilities when we're teleported. So they often use us as frontliners to enter facilities that they're raiding. We can walk through walls, and I actually have a picture somewhere among my many of me going into a wall, walking through a wall, and coming out of a wall. And it was done with a Bushnell hunting cam. But I have thousands of pictures that I need to get rid of because they're taking up too much memory. So I started filming the abductions, and I found an old camera system that picked up the ETs when they entered the room. It picked up the plasma teleportation process. It was a real old Swan security camera. All the new cameras blew. The batteries exploded. the Bushnell camera was able, hunting Bushnell camera was able to pick up a lot. But when plasma teleportation occurred, it blew it. Batteries exploded, electronics gone, but it did good on a lot of the other stuff. In one of the processes, people become two. They split. One leaves, one remains in the bed. So
You're just taking your astral body in that case, you think?
yeah, two bodies, both bodies affecting matter. We have one of a woman walking around. I didn't pick up on it. She got out of bed, and the other one, but she's still in her bed when she got out of her bed. And she walks around the house for a while. She has this grayish tint to her, and she's walking around the house. Normally, when they do that, they're not leaving you walking around. They take you. She had conflicts with the Pleadians, so they no longer allow her. They no longer abduct. She was having tantrums and fights, so they banned her from future abductions. The Pleadians did. And like, I remember one fight she was describing. Well, why the hell am I going to school when I don't remember what I'm going to school for? So she was having that one over and over and over. And then they don't allow us to eat.
Fair point.
What?
It's a fair point.
Yeah, it is. And it would have been nice if the Palladians gave us some explanation. Then we have another one. We're not supposed to eat when we're teleported.
Pardon?
On rare occasion. So they were taking her food away from her, and she had a tantrum and threw it all over the place. So that one was the final one. So after that, they made it plain. The council has made the decision. I tried to speak, for her to them, but they had made a decision. She had a history of violence with them. They don't tolerate any violence.
No.
In the abductions. Any anger, any aggression, they don't tolerate any of that. So the hybrids are learning that, basically, the Earth hybrids.
Okay.
And so I've just started to do the research on the Earth hybrids. Because
why do you think they want to make hybrids with us, especially if we have sort of a lot of aggressive tendencies?
Well, no, the aggressive tendencies has to do with the society structure.
Our society structure.
Yeah. It's a survival atmosphere. It's a vicious atmosphere that was much set up by the reptilians, the hoarding of resources. So the hybrids.
What sort of resources? What sort of resources?
I'm sorry, I had trouble hearing that.
What sort of resources do you mean? The hiding of resources?
Having contactees have their genetics checked. And I expect to find a lot more, because the ones that they're sending me to breed with are on Earth, all over the world, actually. So I'm curious which ones. We know the Greys are taking the human and re-energizing their own genetic structure, basically. Their genetic structure has become fragile for many reasons. And somebody was explaining it like copying, like doing copying paper out of a copier. You recopy it enough times, they're describing the Greys' genetics as that. Now, recently, I just came across something saying the Greys are no longer doing the genetics. So I got to follow up on that. The last person was a woman in Germany who they put an embryo in 2010, or that's the person I spoke with. She's since disappeared. Now, the Greys are taking people now. They're giving people choices of evacuation now. Most
people are leaving already.
What?
Some people are already leaving.
Yeah, but most people have loved ones, and they are not going to leave their loved ones behind. And not very many have agreed to go, but apparently enough. I think my friend went in Germany, and she was very close to them, to the point where the Greys are in her home. doing physical evaluations on her. Now, the Greys I'm involved with are very objective, is the best way I can describe them. I like their reasoning.
You do?
Yeah. Especially the division of those that serve one another and those that serve themselves. One is the cause of war. Those that serve themselves are what our wars are about. The awards are for the elite and the few, which the reptilians set the structure up for. The Pleadian structure is, there's no hierarchy. There's, it's more socialistic, much more social. I've been questioning some of the American Indians, and I have a contact in Australia who's native to Australia. And I'm finding a lot of similarities with the tribal structures to the Pleadian structures. So I've been curious to look at that. So I think what they want, so I think somehow my purpose is aligned with the evacuation of Earth.
Thanks, Kenneth Hyde Hopkins. Wow. So, gosh, which planet? Who's leaving? Which, the greater space cabbers community have any thoughts? Send us an email at spacecab13@gmail.com, and maybe you'll be next. Okay. Till next Monday morning. Over and out.